Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Today we're going to be talking about this book, Supercharging the Customer Experience, How Organizational Alignment Drives Performance. And I've got Dave Stubblefield and Alan Williams with me today. Welcome. Before we get in and talk about your book, where can people find you?
Thanks, Tim. Well, I'm predominantly on LinkedIn as Dave Stubblefield. There's not many Stubblefields out there, so shouldn't be too hard to find. And I'm probably the one that's more active than most. I'm posting a lot more than I ever used to. I do Top Tip Tuesday, Stubby's Top Tips. So
Stubby's Top Tips on Tuesday.
Yeah, I need to actually get back in the routine of doing that. I haven't done it for 2 weeks. So yeah, LinkedIn for me.
Okay, and Alan?
Yeah, well, it's LinkedIn for me as well. There are more Williamses than Stubblefields, I guess. So if you look for Alan Williams Servicebrand, you will find me. And I don't do top tips.
Love the book. It's not a boring book because you've got loads of illustrations, which makes it really easy to read, and lots of diagrams. What was the inspiration behind it?
Go on, Alan.
Well, we were actually creating a development program. And when we were thinking about this, we were kind of asking ourselves the question, how are we going to set ourselves apart from all the other people out there that deliver training and development programs in the area of customer experience? And we kept coming back to this question that, look, with all that content out there on the topic, why is great customer experience so rare? And it led us to realize that it's not about content, it's about context. Yep. That's what's really important. And so we started to build the development program. And then I think it was a break we had, Dave, wasn't it? And I said to Dave, hey, how do you fancy becoming a published author? What was your reaction?
I think I laughed in your face at the time. But yeah, it really kind of struck me by surprise. And I kind of was like a deer in the headlights. And I don't think I actually reacted straight away. I waited for Alan to kind of explain. And he said the framework has created a good spine for a book.
Yep,
yeah, I kind of went, why not? So jumped in with both feet. And I have to say, I'm glad I had Alan along for the journey, because I don't know where I'd be without him. I really don't.
Good old Alan. Alan, I was going to keep this towards the end, but actually I wanted to pick it up now. You've actually invented a new word, haven't you? Servicebrand.
Yes.
So I was going to start as the sort of that in the middle of the onion, but I decided that's kind of the outside of it. And if we start, why have you created this word Servicebrand, and what do you mean by it?
Okay. So you might think of traditional service brands as, say, a hotel or an airline, where it's really clear that service is fundamental to what that brand delivers to its customers. But actually, as time has gone by, if you think about, say, phones or tech or automotive, they're actually not selling service, they're selling products. But because their products are so similar, the way that they can differentiate themselves from each other is through service. And they have therefore become service brands as well. So basically, it's any brand for which service is a fundamental part of what it offers. This doesn't deal with manufacturers of hammers, for instance.
Yes, but if you're selling most cars are a tin box with 4 wheels, and they will have a particular badge on, but ultimately, most cars are the same. I mean, the JD Power report that used to come out with a list of which are the top cars, they actually said, and this was probably about 10 years ago, where they said you can't buy a bad car. If you come off a holiday and come to the car park in the airport and it's freezing cold, it will start.
Yeah, well, Tim, I think your comment that you can't buy a bad car, Dave will have some comment on that in a minute. But To your point about JD Power, I did a large project with an automotive company, and in the US, we moved from number 10 in JD Power to number 2, purely through using this framework that we talk about in the book.
Right. Because when you start the book by saying, and I always love the Charles Darwin quote, that it's not the strongest of the species that survives or the most intelligent, it's the most adaptable to change. And that's the way that you start the book. And I was like, okay, right, this is what this is about. Context rather than content. So talk to us about, because customer experience is the same, isn't it? It's not changed for years. It's the same thing, isn't it?
I'll take that one. So I would agree and disagree at the same time. I think the experience itself is very much the same. The world in which we live in is what's changed. We've moved kind of from the age of information into the age of the customer. I recently changed my utilities provider. All I had to do was provide my latest invoice or report. Looking at it, it doesn't make any sense to me. I provided that. The next thing you know, I get a welcome letter. I'm part of a new organization. As far as I'm aware, that it's been a seamless transition. It's now easier than ever before for customers to change provider, supplier, almost at the click of a button. And that's where the change has been. If you then take that into the realms of social media, one bad experience, depending on your following, can have a massively detrimental or positive reaction to an organization. So if you have a really great experience and you tell the world about that, fantastic. You've inspired others to use that. And that's why we got this world of influencers now online. And again, you could just be Mr. Joe Blogs, Mr. Public, had a really bad experience that someone sees, tells their mate about, and it just spirals out of control. And that's when things just go viral. That's the change for me. So the experience is very much the same. It's the world in which we live in that's driven the change.
The way we describe that, Tim, is C to the power of 3. So yes, there are other things that influence, but basically the 3 C's of first, choice. So people used to make choices based on a very rational basis, often financially driven, whereas now it's very emotion driven and based on what's important to us and our values. So fair trade, I think, is a brilliant example of this, where people are willing to spend a 25% premium on a fair trade product, not because it's better quality, not because it's better value for money, but because they believe in the way that it's got to the shelf. That's the first C. The second one is all about communication. So this is the internet and social media and what Dave just talked about. And then the third one is control. So it used to be that an organization owned its brand. You know, a big company would decide how it wanted to be seen in the world, and then it would pump that message out there, keep its fingers crossed and hope for the best that enough people believed it. Whereas now we don't believe the corporate messaging. What we believe is the TripAdvisor reviews, what our friends tell us about their experience. So control has shifted from the organization to co-ownership by all of the stakeholders of the organization. So those 3 C's combine to create a perfect storm, which we call the values economy.
I remember a very large shipping organization with taking passengers, and they had a bout of some stomach bug or something that everybody basically got, and they went to the PR people and they said, "How did you find out about that?" And the press said, "Well, we saw it on social media."
Yeah.
He said, "Who did that?" "Well, your passengers posted on it." Hello.
Yeah.
And that's the change. There's a complete loss of control, isn't there? So you talk in the book about alignment, an organizational alignment driving performance. Explain that to me.
Go on, Alan. You go.
So the three critical areas of any business are brand identity. So this is having crystal clarity about what the business character or what it stands for is, and this is where your purpose and your values sit. Then there's employee engagement, so the way that you treat everybody that represents you, and importantly, this is directly employed people, it might be outsourced people as well. And then finally, the customer experience, being consistent. But the important thing in our model is that these three areas are aligned, not treated as individual functions or silos. So the example I like to give is that if you are going to visit a traditional law firm today,
Yep.
and then following that you went to visit a trendy tech company, you would have certain expectations about the style of the service delivery. And if you turned up at your traditional law firm and you encountered employees wearing flip-flops and shorts and t-shirts and speaking in a pretty relaxed way, you would probably feel very uncomfortable. And so it has to be brand aligned to realize the most value. Whereas a lot of organizations we find kind of say, oh, we want to have great 5-star customer service. Well, actually, that's no good unless it's rooted in what you stand for.
So in terms of if we work through those and let's go into those in detail. So, go in and explain to me brand identity.
So I think for me, it's the brand identity piece. I saw a really great post on LinkedIn the other day that was talking about company logos. And company logos, we naturally associate the image, potentially the color, or potentially the avatar or the mascot maybe of a logo, and we go, oh, that's the brand. It's not. It's so much more than that. It's how you connect with that organization, that brand, how they make you feel, all of these different attributes that bring together that brand, and it's driven by every component of a business. I think a lot of organizations think that customer service is customer experience, and it's not. It's completely different. If you've got a piece of software, the guys that are designing it and developing it, they need to be fully in tune with what the customer wants and what they need. And we're getting closer to that nowadays with user experience and stuff like that. But there are a lot of organizations that don't join those dots together. So that brand identity, every team will have their own culture and way of working. It's how do we align it across the entire organization so that customer experience is just driving that performance.
And that brand being things like Louis Vuitton don't sell suitcases, they sell lifestyle.
Yeah. And to translate that into that practical example, we were talking about the traditional law firm. Let's say that you turn up for your appointment and on the website, they talked about how much they value respect, and that's why you chose them. And so you arrive 10 minutes early for your appointment, you go to the reception desk. Let's say there's a lady behind the desk who's chatting to a friend and ignores you and finishes the conversation first. Then she asks you to go and sit down. Your appointment time arrives and passes. You go back to the desk and say, look, it was supposed to be 5 minutes ago that my appointment was here. And she said, don't you understand these people are very busy? Can you just go and wait? You're already thinking this is not the respect that they said they were so passionate about.
So explain to me employee engagement.
So I'll take that one, and that's about like I said just now, anybody that represents you, and they can be directly employed, but they can be outsourced as well, feeling passionate and being brand ambassadors for the organization, and you creating the environment for that to thrive and prosper as a feeling amongst those people.
And also you talk about in your three customer experience. So give me an example where you're bringing those three pieces together. So brand identity, employee engagement, and customer experience.
So you could start with maybe the brand itself has some type of uniform. Are employees aligned in that standard, or are they varying off from it? Do some people have their own hoodie they bring in when it's cold, or do they have a company branded one? Does the company provide that? And if that standard isn't there, does that start to slip? And people go, well, it's hot at the minute, so I might wear shorts tomorrow. And then you might end up in the realms of what Alan said, where people are walking around in shorts, t-shirt, flip-flops, maybe, and that standard that was there has now dipped off. So that's the brand identity informing the employee engagement, but it's also that employee engagement that you want those advocates that Alan said that absolutely are proud to wear that uniform and stand behind everything it means, the values of the organization as well.
I headed up an account for one of the big four banks, and we put in place a service delivery program called Our World Class Way. And I remember coming into work one morning and walking past the security guard at the elevator, who was chewing his gum and had a pair of brown shoes on that were really not very clean. And from that moment, I remember I walked past him and said, we need to have a conversation when you finished your breakfast. And then we did some work around explaining how important it was that everybody had black polished shoes, because otherwise it's not world class. So you're not sticking to what you say you are all about.
You also talk in the book about two other areas, which is systems and process, and measurement and insights. So give us give us an overview of what you talk about in terms of systems and process and how you're bringing this together.
Yeah, I'll take the systems and process, and then maybe Dave can talk about measurement and insight in a minute. So systems and processes in our model is basically all the stuff that we do to make the business go around day to day. And that includes, importantly, the organization structure, for instance. Now, many organizations are a slave to the organization structure, which gets in the way of their performance, whereas in our model, it's very clearly there as a support, and its function is to help brand identity, employee engagement, and customer experience to go round and be aligned. And if it's not helping, then it's not doing its job. Other interesting parts of systems and process, communication framework. So very often communication grows organically and without any intention or design around it. And so what we encourage our clients to do is do a communication audit, where you look at everything that is in place in the way of meetings, communications, written, email, absolutely everything, and consciously ask the question, what's this for? Who's it from? Who's it to? What are the channels? And are we doing it right? And then the final one, which is a favorite of mine, is glossary or language. Yeah. And this is so important because language sets the tone. And my favorite example, I was talking about this earlier today, a train company who was being crucified by customer comments. And when they did an investigation, they discovered that their frontline customer service people were calling passengers human freight. So hardly a surprise that the attitude wasn't very good in the way of customer service. So language and glossary are really important part of systems and processes.
Yeah, that's a really good example, isn't it? Dave.
Yeah, so measurement and insight. Yeah. So for me, again, it's that the systems and process that kind of go hand in hand with a measurement and insight. So what are we measuring as a result of that process, and what's the system giving us? But it's kind of taking it to the next level, really. So a lot of organizations will have KPIs in place and will have had KPIs in place for years. I think our question is, do you still need them? Are they still relevant? Why do you have them? And I think we get stuck in the routine of, we must do this monthly report, and we churn out those numbers. Who's interested in them? What are they driving? Are we just creating that report for the sake of it? Is it a vanity metric? And I think you could argue that lots of customer experience metrics that are out there, some companies use to say, look at our score. But they're not using the insight that goes with it to drive improvement. Or they're taking that score and go, we need to be better. We need to have a higher score. And they're trying to drive the score rather than the experience. So the measurement and insight piece kind of underlines the importance of measures and metrics and having them in the right place, definitely, because they are needed. You need that baseline to see where you were and where you are now and where you can get to. But also, what's the insight that's being provided? It could be that there's a net promoter score response from a customer. For whatever reason, the score hasn't come through. but you've got a comment there from the customer that says they're either really, really happy to be working with you, or they're really, really upset. What are you using? How are you using that insight? If we haven't got the number, it almost becomes irrelevant. We want to get back to that customer and either thank them for their comment or find out what we can do to resolve the problem. So it's really kind of taking the measures that we have, assessing how accurate they are today, if we need them, and then driving the insight to drive the experience.
Excellent. Dave and Alan, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book, Supercharging the Customer Experience, How Organizational Alignment Drives Performance. If I wanted to buy one of these, where can I get one from?
Amazon.
It was a test. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazon. Yeah.
And tell and let people know again where they can find you.
Yeah, so I'm active on LinkedIn, Dave Stubberfield, with Top Tip Tuesday. So yeah, come and see me on there.
Yeah, and you can find me the same place. So Alan Williams, probably put Servicebrand on the end, you'll find me quicker. And I've just thought, actually, I've got some books. So if you want a special deal, get in touch direct rather than with Amazon.
So people could come to you direct, can they?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Fantastic. Dave, Alan, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. And just to pick up, Andrew says, another great show, Tim. Thank you, Alan and Dave.